See this little light of mine? I'm gonna let it shine. Okay, just need to set up this light and hopefully it doesn't drop. Let's hope it doesn't drop. Cool. So yeah, obviously woke up this morning and, pretty early. Well, pretty early for me, before 10 o'clock. And I thought it's those weird realizations you come to when you think about how I woke up today and I actually have nothing to do or nothing like planned. I don't have to like wake up and like go to work or go to uni or, pick up my sister from nursery, even though it's a Saturday, so nurseries don't normally run on Saturdays. But yeah, basically what I'm getting at. It's weird how, I live in this house because I'm here to go to university and I'm not currently planning to do university work because I did work yesterday. And, I'm basically applying for money so that I can live in this house and, gain access to education outside of my hometown. And it's all these weird things that came about. But obviously, one of the biggest things that came about was when I thought about these things, was the saying that education is a right and not a privilege. So, speaking about privilege, it's how do I say it? It's quite interesting how people talk a lot about the gap between people in the sense that certain people have access to things, but other people don't have access to things. But then there's the other thing about privilege, about some people, about how people are treated by others, or how people, the things that people are born with. That kind of extrapolate as they grow older in society. So there's little things of like, all men are born equal, unless they're women, haha, or unless they're this or less of that. So I think one thing I noticed about privilege is the fact that it's harder to notice, especially obviously if your entire circle is around the same level. So say for example, this is the bread line. So no one in your circle is worried about starvation because they're a certain level above the bread line, and no one in your circle is so much richer than someone else, or so much more connected than someone else. So like it's weird how this little detailed finger diagram I have here kind of details what I mean. So this is the bread line. This is where most of your friends are, or might be. I don't know you, so literally there's this massive gap. So no one in your friend thinks about starvation, and maybe you might be in a certain strata where you don't actually have to worry about getting a job, which is quite interesting. Which means you can go to university and do things and like just be free to just go for the pure academic pursuit of education. I also thought this quite interesting because that's part of the reason why I went to uni. And when you do something like philosophy and linguistics like I do, that is often a thing for people who don't really fear getting a job directly outside, which often is a reflection of the fact that they aren't really in a position where they are under pressure to do so, to like help contribute to the family, and all these things, in the entire family's collective plight to avoid starvation and live in a calm, safe, warm home, but interestingly enough, just looking compared to, a lot of my counterparts, my classmates, I don't know, a lot of them are children of homeowners, for example. They're children of maybe some form of business owners, people that actually have like, real money or older money compared to my parents who aren't rich by any stretch of imagination, but they're just like comfortable enough, which is why I talk about the idea of not being just sheerly privileged, but the idea of being above a certain threshold. So like my family and probably a lot of people whose parents do philosophy, are probably above that threshold of worrying about job security, for example, because they're not at any real risk of starvation, for example. Although most people aren't, even in my like an economic strata of working class, most people aren't really, but can't just take a day off or can't go on holiday like 3 times a year to wherever they want, shit like that, right? Oh, light's gone. Okay, but yeah, but going from that, it was this idea of I had this other idea of like two types of privilege. So you have what I call negative and positive privilege. So negative privilege would be something like a thing that a lot of people, at least in a given society, would argue that everyone should have, but certain people don't. So a very easy example is to be treated with respect and dignity by the police force, for example. This is something that people often agree everyone should have, and everyone should feel calm and be able to talk to police without feeling vindicated or feeling either victimized or feeling like they're automatically a criminal, for example, feeling criminalized automatically. But this is the thing that a number of people don't have. The classic one is like inner city children. People say particularly black and other minority ethnic children. Don't have this privilege. This becomes a privilege because it's actually something everyone else should have. Just like education, for example, becomes some of a privilege because some people just can't afford everything else around university. Like, for example, before your student loan drops, you need to find a house. And to find a house and to secure a house, you need about £500. Not everyone has £500 lying about, especially when it's summer. People might already put some of that money down for holidays and all these other things. Yeah, they can draw out that money, but that will mean, we can't do this next year, or we can't go on a holiday until next year. These things, it's what makes, certain privileges, gaps a bit more obvious. You know, that's negative privilege, the idea, things that everyone should be able to have access to, like people say education, healthcare, stuff like that, but others, some people don't. Positive privilege is probably the more typical thing when we talk about being privileged, for example. So, no one's at like threat of being killed what other people wouldn't be, for example. But positive privilege is the case where people have something that, is an advantage, but people wouldn't argue that everyone should start off, or should, or ought to at least have things like just the sheer amount of money, so like excess money. So people argue that you should be able to at least earn a living wage, but people won't argue that everyone in the world should be able to earn 65k as their first job, for example. Because it's not necessary. So this extra money would allow maybe that parent to help to invest in their child, to be able to buy them the nicer clothes, buy them a reliable car, pay for a nanny so they don't have to they don't have to share the burden of child rearing on their younger brothers and sisters. For example, these little things that people don't argue everyone should have, but become a thing that like, I'll give you a quick example. So, okay, we'll go with stereotypical shit. So, inner city kid, oldest in his family, he has to spend some of his time that could be dedicated to homework and shit like that on like looking after his kids, maybe even helping to cook. Not his kids, sorry, his younger brothers and sisters, helping to cook and whatnot even. Whereas, other kid, for example, bit more privileged, might even have a driver, for example, who will drive him to and from school, so he doesn't have to deal with the awkwardness of trying to squeeze into public transport. When he gets home, he can relax because food is already made for him and his younger brothers and sisters. As a matter of fact, will make him more privileged, or him or her, or whatever. They are the youngest sibling. Everyone else is older. His older brother has already like a small business getting started up that even if all fails, he can start working in, for example. These things is where the gap widens, right? But anyway, that's positive and negative privilege. If you have any questions, ask them below. It's a weird concept, I guess. But yeah, the key thing is people talk about privilege and stuff, and it's important to check your privilege and shit, especially. But it's not like you have to walk around all day, with a list of okay, I have the privilege of living in the United Kingdom, and my parents aren't on the breadline and all these things. But I think the most important thing, other than checking your privilege, when you're talking about sociological issues and understanding, your perspective, but we'll go into that in the next video, is how we can actually use the privileges we have I'm talking mostly about positive privileges, but also in terms of negative privileges, to actually help each other out and, like, do some really cool things. Lights gone again. So, for example, in the case of like a negative privilege, we'll talk about police brutality, for example, that, or how police are maltreated, especially in the United States. Someone, white, for example, could, use their privilege to actually help out in that situation, for example. I think there was an example of this guy who said, the next time I see a black man stopped by the police for what seems like a non-issue, I'm going to stand there as well, for example. These little things, because, it's that joke about blue eyes white privilege. Like, I've probably seen probably interacted with a police officer and leave to tell the tale, these things. But other things like privilege, so like, if you have a lot of money or a lot of free time, maybe use it to create some really good art, or some really interesting art, that can really just help to push culture and stuff. But also, who knows, if you have enough money or free money, who knows, maybe you can even invest in things, in some cool things. Or maybe, a lot of people say they want to donate to charity. Some people call it like guilt absolution, for example. Some people call it, oh, it's really cool. Like, what if they just held that money for themselves? And I will say it's better to just do the things that you feel are good, and then analyze yourself as you go along. Which also goes into my next point of the awkwardness with privilege, is the fact that when you want to, invest, and you want to like help build each other up, or build people up, or help people out, people are very liable to the savior mentality. For example. So, because obviously you're in that comfortable position, you see people that are less comfortable than you. You have this, you're liable to have this whole fear that they're these poor downtrodden people, and you need to do everything you can to save them. When I feel it's best to just try and help empower them, and just, some people are only held back by money. Some people are held back by more than money. Some people have been held back by money so far that it starts to extrapolate. But sometimes you just have to, help them out a bit, but not, try and be that Superman, or try and be that, that golden shining figure, because of course, no one's perfect. And then, in addition to that, it's the whole fact of, it becomes more of an ego trip rather than, just a manner of just helping to build yourself and helping to build them up, because you can learn so much from just chilling with someone outside of your socio-economic circle, or outside of whatever circle, or from a different country, for example. These things, they can bring a lot of cool experiences, as long as you don't approach it with the savior mindset, and approach it more of the learning and growing mindset, that can actually help bring some really cool interactions about, and you never know where it will go, to be honest. But yeah, to summarize, I just wanted to advocate for, it's not just enough to just say check your privilege in terms of social, when you're discussing like socio-economic issues, but also maybe see where you can use, this little light of yours, in order to shine, and maybe, help empower other people without, becoming this savior figure. Just becoming a human. I mean, it's all about, human to human interactions and whatnot. You can all sing in harmony and joy, because no more kids starve, and no more, no more, I don't know, privileged people run the world. I don't know. But yeah, just see what you can do, I guess.